Thank you so much. There was a lot of interest in this book. And yeah, oh gosh, thanks, Anna, for that thumbs up. But I kind of don't mind that it's a smaller group for the discussion right now. Uh, my name is Sarah Wolf. I know some of you, but haven't had the chance to meet all of you. I serve as the Strategic Policy Director at Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. And I'd like to pass it to my two colleagues to introduce themselves briefly and thank them for being here. And then, since it's a small number, if you're willing to say um, whether you want to put it in the chat or be on camera or off, just let us know your name and where you live. And if you're with a particular congregation or community of conscience or faith community and you want to mention that, that's great too. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to ask Buff to introduce himself, please. And Buff, you are on mute, I think.
Thank you. Hey, it's Buff Grace. It's good to see a number of you here that I recognize and love to meet the others of you that I don't. And I work with faith communities across Minnesota, mainly in the metro and southern part of the state. Pass it to Sam.
Hey everyone, my name is Sam. My pronouns are he, they. I do communications work with MNIPL, so if you get our newsletter, you've probably seen my name in your inbox. And I'm excited to be here and part of this conversation with y'all.
Thanks. Don, may I pass it over to you and then to Anna and then to Paul?
Yep, I'm Don Green. I am in Minneapolis and just trying to survive each one day at a time right now.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm Anna Barker, Anna B. in Woodbury on the Carver Lake neck of the woods. And I heard about this wonderful event from Buff because he's been with us at a newly forming eco-faith collaborative here on the East Metro. And my faith community is the House of Hope Presbyterian in St. Paul. So thanks, Buff.
My name's Paul England, and I live in South St. Paul, Minnesota. My faith community is Unity Unitarian Church, right kitty-cornered to House of Hope. It's nice to be here. I was just thinking before we all signed in here, the sociological effect of lying is tremendous, and we are getting, bludgeoned by lies, and it's so destructive of human connections, and just the topic of lies came to my mind. Just
Yeah.
to cheer you all up.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that comment. Ted, and then Harvey. Ted, I don't know if you are on mute for me, I think. Oh,
Okay, there. Sorry,
Hi.
I couldn't get it unmuted, and I have my daughter's dog here who keeps bringing the squeaky ball to me. But anyway, Ted Benson, unaffiliated, very interested. I've been aware of this book and the project that I think it's Pilgrim Baptist Church does. One in St. Paul anyway for a while. So glad to see this. I'm going to mute that again.
Great. Thanks, Ted.
Sarah, how can I do this?
That's great. And Harvey, I don't know if you're in a spot where you want to say anything, and that's just fine if you uh, don't. But if you do, welcome.
Okay if I
Yes,
do and okay if I don't, huh?
absolutely.
I just got, we just got back. We live at Boutwell's Landing in Oak Park Heights, which is an old folks' home. And I'm 87 years old, but I'm still perking along and very intrigued with the mini forest revolution. I think it's an incredible movement, and I just wanted to learn more.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And I see Don just dropped in. Don, we've just finished introducing ourselves, and hi. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, thank you. My name's Dawn Doring. I live in Lindstrom, Minnesota, but at the moment I'm visiting family in Colorado, and where it's very dry. But I was in on this last one. I really like the idea of these kind of positive sides to climate change and action oriented and what we can do. And my background is in biology, and so I was especially curious about this one as well, in the mini forest, and I do have questions about it. And I didn't get to read the whole book. I did listen to part of the interview, and it's great that Hannah is now in Minnesota, I guess, and we'll be doing the interview. So I'm going to have to jump off early too because I double booked myself tonight. So
No
thank you
worries.
for having me.
Great. Thanks, Don. Yeah. And then Michaela, hi. Michaela also works with MNIPL. Michaela, I don't know if you are able to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I can really quick. Sorry, I can turn my camera on in a little bit. But my name's Michaela. I do work at MNIPL. I'm our youth program and outreach coordinator. And I also work at another nonprofit that focuses on sustainable landscaping, and we do a lot of urban forestry. So definitely want to just hear what the book talked about. I've heard about this method for a long time and have done or went to a few webinars and sessions about it. So excited to listen and learn.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. I just have a little bit of an opening to explain why I'm drawn to this book and the topics herein. Because if you know me from the past at all, you might know that I think about climate a lot, but I'm not an ecologist, um, but I am a biodiversity and ecosystem appreciator, and I appreciate how that is connected to the climate. So I've been drawn to, I started reading Mini Forest Revolution many months ago, and I'm drawn to this for three key reasons that I'm just going to share a little bit about. Yes, and Sam, thank you so much for running the slides. And this is a point where we can just go backwards to that forest picture slide would be great. And then I'll be coming up to that one. But for a long time now, I've been thinking as I drive around a lot about cement and asphalt and parking lots, especially when they're empty. And it feels like I look around and I see sometimes small, sometimes huge pieces of this expanse, and it doesn't appear that very much is happening on them. And I wonder if it could have a higher use. And I see this in my neighborhood or in all parts of places where I go. I'm looking at that. And a good mentor of mine over the years has been a retired ecologist who really asked me to always be thinking about cumulative effects as we were looking at development or designing solutions. And he said, development, any single project is most likely not a problem, not the problem, but it is these cumulative pinpricks that add of one project against another project and another that add up to something which makes an ecosystem not able to function as it might have before and adds up to harm. And this collective harm is why we are in the position we are in regards to climate across the globe. But he would say that knowing this, we can develop differently and we can repair too as we look to do development or redevelop areas that might find other uses. And so this is a concept that has stuck with me over the years and was resonating as I was reading this book. But the second category of reason that I've been thinking about this book is that I've been working in the space of environmental advocacy for about 9 years now, and I've come to understand many different pieces of advocacy across climate and across energy and across environment spaces. And it is not true that universally they understand the importance of biodiversity and or understand the importance of ecosystems. And in some cases, the formula for climate solution, particularly by various industries or by various interest groups, ends up being about the carbon molecule and how you can capture that and move that around and put it someplace so that you can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and then have a better climate effect. And what's missing from this is the understanding that we are not just in a single climate crisis, but as the United Nations said back in 2021, we are in 3 intertwined crises. It's the climate crisis. It's also the destruction of ecosystems and biodiversity loss. And it's also pollution. And these 3 are interrelated and they affect each other. And so if we think about a pipeline, for example, a pipeline being built, it is not, let's say it's taking tar sands from one place to another. It's not just about the burning of emissions that are enabled by that pipeline, but it's also looking at what happens to the ecosystems that the pipeline travels through, what happens with water pollution and other elements as well. So these concepts inform what climate solutions might look like, and pollution solutions might look like, and ecosystem solutions might look like. Real solutions, I'd posit, are those that work towards all 3 of those things. If we are sacrificing 2 of those things because they capture carbon molecules and help us reduce an emission, we're not going to be adding to the collective benefit, but we may be mostly adding to collective harm. And so I think our climate champions, whether they're in the legislature or they're around us and as we're thinking about things, need to really better understand that solutions are only solutions when they work to all 3 of these things. And the third reason that I've been drawn to this book and this book series we're doing is because, as you all know, the landscape has shifted dramatically in the last year. And I used to say that it was important to work on public policy because that is how you brought good action to scale in a way that made a difference on a timeline that made a difference. But we've now all seen that policy levers at the federal level and most recently at the state level too are being hampered, if not just totally turned over. And so this is in a moment when we have to shift and we have to think about what we can do. We're in and in many ways it's an exciting moment. And I think the last book focused on that. So I'll give you a little pitch for the the notes and resources from that. But this book too, I think, is about what we can do together. And that's regardless of where we are on the political landscape. So, so I want to thank this book for bringing these ideas together for me. The short version is this next slide. If you see a barren piece of land, remember, it can be a potential forest. And if we want to spur that process along with great intention and planning, we can make that forest happen, not in the space of geologic time, but in human timeframes that can make a difference. So I would love with this group, I know some of you are leaving in a bit, but as long as you're here, if we could just, well, I'd love to have a little bit of discussion about the questions. I know that some mentioned that they've been reading the book or listening to it. Some mentioned that maybe they haven't. And I have a few slides that does a summary of what this process is all about. Is it all right if I hit those slides now?
Yes.
Kind of quickly move through them?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm going to thank Hannah Lewis here for this awesome revolution that she's launching and running with. This is a method that the Miyawaki method to rapidly rewild the world has been around. It precedes Hannah Lewis, of course, but she was inspired to create this mini forest when she was in France, and she planted it in December of 2021 with a community of people. She went through this process and she wanted to read the book to document experiences of various communities around the globe and her experience with this. And she sent me this picture of where her mini forest in Roscoff on the northwestern coast of France is as of this summer. And it looks like this densely packed forest in its early stages. If we can go to the next slide, Sam. One of the set of pictures in her book is about this town in Japan. And if you are looking at this picture and you can see in the very back, there are some very tall cedar trees that look like they're alongside a tunnel. Well, those trees were on either side of this road. And some highway construction was going to impact those trees, and they were going to need to come down, even though this road was going to stay in place. And so what you can imagine, I don't have a photo of it, but you can imagine those trees extending down and the shade they provided and what they were for this neighborhood. But the person who took this photo also wanted to invest in a mini forest, a corridor along here. And so what you're seeing on the sides now are the various plantings. They're hard to distinguish because they're in the very early phase after being planted. But in the next picture, in the next slide, you see here it is a 14-year-old Miyawaki mini forest with a multi-layered band of vegetation along the walkway. And those homes are still there, though you can't see them because of the thickness of this forest. You would go to the next slide, Sam, please. This illustration shows us basically one of the ways this Miyawaki method works. And essentially, the premise here is that you get, with particular planting methods, a forest in 10 years that functions as though it's 100 years old. And the way that you do that is that you supercharge the planting of the climax forest species, which will be the biggest, tallest trees that will be in your forest. Through the natural progression of just the world, a plot of land moving, moving and evolving, it takes perhaps 100 or 200 years to get those climax species, because what you begin with are different plants that are that are growing with the sunlight, and then you have slightly bigger perennial herbs and grasses that grow, and then some shrubs that will move in and grow, and then shade intolerant trees. But before you get to these climax species. And with the Miyawaki method, you end up going in with the climax species trees at first, from the very first, along with some shrubs and some other annual plants. And you pack them very densely so that root structures can really take off. And so the growth of the trees is really inspired in order to reach up to the sun and grow taller and taller as quickly as they can. Let's move on to the next slide. So I think actually this is, maybe we'll stop the slideshow for a minute. And I'll just say there are other pieces to the Miyawaki method, the densely packing the specific species, but one of the very important parts is that the species are native species, meaning they are the kinds of plants that would have grown in the area without human interference 300, 400 years ago. And the reason native species are so successful is because they evolved to be successful in those places for that in those places. And so it's critical that the plantings are really focused on those that can be those native species of all kinds that go in there. Once these, so the basic system is the planning of the forest includes getting a community together, making a really detailed species list, then doing some pretty solid soil preparation and amendment so that the saplings can be can take as well as possible, and then maintaining the forest kind of loosely for 3 years, after which point it will not need much at all. And you will have, in 10 years, a dense forest that will be taking off. That's the general idea. I don't doubt that many of you are much more experienced in all of this than I am and would have provided better explanations. But we'll call that good for now, because I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on what's inspired you to come tonight and around this topic. We have 3 questions that we kind of put together just as fodder for starting, really what I'm interested in talking about is what you might be interested in talking about. But one of my first questions is, do you feel like this is a useful concept for us in this moment? We know deforestation continues around the globe. Do you think it's useful to think about planting mini forests? And have you thought about if there's a good spot you've seen in your neighborhood or around, and you've thought, like, I wonder if there's something else, would that be a good spot for a mini forest? I'm interested in hearing what's been interesting to you about this book.
If I can just start off with one piece, just for a historical viewpoint, if you wonder if this is a concept that will work, you have to realize that Minneapolis, the city itself, is prairie. All of the trees here, this is all human-made forest here. It's not natural to this area. Even the squirrels were brought in by Thomas Lowry. That was one of his little gifts that has lasted forever. So when you get up in a tall building and you look out over the metropolitan, basically you see a green canopy. So that's in a big thing. But if you take even empty lots or whatever, even your boulevards, that all is can all be part of that. One of my issues right now is as Minneapolis is going through, it's replacing all the gas lines. They're, doing a lot of work on the sidewalks and everything else, and they're, emptying out the space between the sidewalks and the curb. And what they're doing is they're filling them in full. And in my neighborhood, we dug them all out. So they'd be an inch low. So when the snow melts or when it rains, all that water goes into that little space and soaks in. It's like a miniature rain garden. But now as they're going through and doing it, the park board is just filling them up flush again. It's like, I'm trying to say, no, don't leave them a little bit low, because even when the snow melts, instead of having water on the sidewalk and then it melts through into ice, it stays in that little 1 inch deep pond. Little practical things like that make a big difference.
I can only imagine, Don. I hope you're sharing that insight.
I have to my council person says too. This is like, I just like, so, and in fact, in my neighborhood, we have several. I mean, it's also legal in Minneapolis to let your property go back to prairie. And in my neighborhood, we have several houses where they don't have lawn anymore. It's basically all back to prairie grasses. As long as it's kept up and it's, not turned into trash, it works out very nicely.
Yeah, I think you raised a really interesting point. What the prairies have been decimated too, right? We have 2% of the prairie that we used to have, and the value that those have as well. Yeah. So anyone else have some thoughts that they'd want to share at this point? Well, I'd love to go. Buff, did you have a thought there, or should I go back to my slide?
I'll offer a comment. I was fascinated by this concept of this is in the vein of something that's always fascinated me, is kind of people's engagement with the landscape. And the more I've read of human history and anthropology and whatnot, Homo sapiens have been doing this for a very long time. And this was kind of fell into that category of like this concept of supercharging nature, of kind of facilitating nature to go faster than it might in, in a environment without Homo sapiens. So that I just really find that fascinating. I also thought about this a lot in the construction of culture. Um, I'm from down south, and in the south, things grow much faster than they do here in Minnesota. And uh, the an abandoned lot or whatnot will get taken over relatively quickly with a whole succession of different natural wild plants that just grow. Everything from invasive species like kudzu to blackberry and alder and uh, catalpa, and then you name it. It grows really fast, and consequently, the culture has been like the more manicured something is, the more kind of wealthy it is because it it evidences an ability to spend time and money and resources and whatnot to keep that vegetation at bay, so to speak. Um, Whereas here, that there's more open space that is not taken over as quickly, and it does, and culturally there aren't the same assumptions about open space and open land that isn't cultivated. And so I've just been reflecting a lot on that. I don't know exactly how that fits with this mini forest. I still don't quite understand the husbandry of it, and I'm not a good enough gardener to understand exactly how the mini forest works, but so those were my initial thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Buff. I am in New Orleans now, visiting my brother and sister-in-law and 5-year-old niece. And I see the evidence of what you're talking about. Yes, Anna.
Yeah. Um, Three things. Number one, please, everybody, go check out the Minnesota Shade Tree Advisory Council, because it doesn't really fit in with its name, because it is the big umbrella for a huge shade tree short course that takes over Bethel University and has thousands of people attending from all over the United States who, like me, are certified tree inspectors with the DNR or tree care advocates with the University of Minnesota Urban and Community Forestry Division. And at last year's conference, they had a presentation on mini forests, the Japanese way, the honoring the fellow who started this concept. And so when I saw from Buff that you, in your role, Sarah, as a story starter and as a listener and a presenter, thank you for your slides. You did a great job. I thought to myself, ooh, I wish I would have done that first. Hannah got a corner on the market with mini forests because like you said, Don, Minneapolis deals with huge shade trees. And that's how MinStack, the Shade Tree Advisory Council, got going here in Minnesota when all of the beautiful, beautiful elm trees.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so sad. And now in St. Paul and even out here in Woodbury, don't you know, it's all of the emerald ash borers and the poor ash trees. And so cities are really, in a mess, cleaning up and replanting. And as you well noted, you know, Ted, as well, we're Oak Savannah, we're prairie. If you slice our state in three ways, we've got the prairies, and we've got the riparian forest, and we've got the boreal forests, and up in our beautiful Arrowhead, where the fires have happened, and poor Canada. Remember last summer we kept getting wildfire smoke, and we're annoyed here, but those are trees that are getting killed. And so the industry, Sarah, looks not at mini forests like, Mr. Bubbles. We miss Melvin Giles so much at Frogtown Green and in St. Paul. Ufta, just a gem. And we don't think about little things. We think, whoa, what are we going to do to take care of the boulevards and replant the elms and the ash and the arrowhead, and where are we doing our research? Research is being done at the Cloquet Forestry Center, and they have a whole list, and part of what I do is bring together in the East Metro between the St. Croix and the mighty Mississippi, which is going all the way down to New Orleans, where you are. Have a beignet and some wonderful French Cafe du Monde coffee of chicory root, don't you know? But all of these intertwined systems of thinking about what we see and touch and smell, and where your little dog is gonna go with its little bouncy ball and get outside. Those are mini forest applications, and we've got them everywhere you look when you step out, whatever your front door, back door, or garage door looks on. And then we've got parks and we've got cityscapes. And so they're like the right hand and the left hand, and sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is saying, and you can't get any clapping. and and so the industry is big scapes, not thinking mini forests. And mini forests started in Japan for a reason because it's got mini scapes and little rice paddies where grandmas walk out and still cultivate their own rice. And so we need to do what I have been doing for my 40 years working with community forestry and school forests and the DNR and Project Learning Tree and all the things that we've done for trees and kids and schools and community gardens. We have to do a both and. So promote this book like crazy because it's spot on accurate with all of its research and its historical roots, and also look where your parks and recreations, where your property tax dollars are going from your watersheds. Look at where trees are being planted now, because here in Woodbury at Target, they have put in tree trenches, and they're like raised bed gardens, or bigger containers for trees. And that's an opportunity to do the both and, where you plant for pollinators and you put in soft landings instead of donut mulching that kills the trees' necks and covers up their flare root collars. We need all of the both ands that we can come up with. So look up MinStack, the Minnesota Shade Tree Advisory Council, and ordinary people can go to the Shade Tree Short Course, and it's going to be for 2 or 3 days. I forget how many, maybe just a Tuesday, Wednesday. Maybe they bring in all of the tree pruners and all of the techie guys on the Thursday. But it's awesome. And I hope this year that they have more about the mini forests, because they're wonderful and we need them wherever we can possibly put them. Yay, Sarah. Thank you. Thank you.
Anna, oh, so many notes I've just taken down. That is wonderful. And Buff found the link. Thank you so much.
And
Wow.
Buff knows me. We see each other, and so we can you can get my email from him. We can stay in touch. I've got one of my twin daughters. That's why I'm so both and conscientious. Coming back from Uganda, she's been working with a project over there where they it's called Real Fathers, and they get all the dads out and they plant trees and do gardens, and they found that the stereotypes break when dads go out and do all these fun things with their kids. So I need to connect with her when she takes a pit stop in Amsterdam.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
30 hours of transit. Blech.
You are raising so many interesting points about about the planting too. And I just want to call out that Michaela has been working with this youth network for years, several years. And Nalia Schlagers de Santos, who also just joined us, has also,
Hi.
and they've been working with youth in many different times, had planting events. And I just wanted to open it up in case either of you wanted to talk about how the youth you've worked with have responded to that kind of.
Yeah, what are the organizations? Are they Urban Roots in St. Paul? Is it Twin Cities Tree Trust? Is it Youth Conservation Corps? Who are you working with?
So within MNIPL, we have our network's called Youth Empower, the Youth Empower Network. Used to be a all year round school program where we did focusing on tree plantings, community organizing, and like understanding environmental justice and the way it affects our lives and how to be like a part of the movement as a young person that's affected. We planted a mini forest in at North Commons Park in North Minneapolis, not necessarily like how this method is so condensed, but a bit more spread out in some of their like wider space that they have. We planted like 20 trees with youth, with like elementary and middle school kids. Unfortunately, it got mowed down by the city, but we have replanted it. We have a memorial planting there as well. And I also work at Metro Blooms, and we focus
Yep.
on like native plants, but also, like I said, the urban forestry. And we do a lot of tree plantings within Minneapolis to kind of bring the canopy up and the diversity, but also battling with the emerald ash borer issues. So it's
Yep.
kind of like different crossroads, but we do focus on like trying to, bring back trees in Minneapolis because we have such a lack of it, especially in North Minneapolis.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. I wanted to thank you for letting me put you on the spot also. And sorry, y'all, I'm making dinner right now, so that's why I'm off camera. But I feel like Michaela has really been killing it when it comes to like, the community benefit of tree planting
Right.
for a long time and has really been like leading that in many regards. So I did want to hear her ad. I feel like this is very much on topic. But to her point, like the city mowed it down. So there's just so much um work that goes into something seemingly so simple like tree planting, but like it actually takes a lot of work, a lot of continuous care. I've been out there. Michaela was out there. I'm sure she could tell y'all, like for many weeks over and over and over again, watering baby trees. Like we've done it. So it's just I feel like if it at times feels like such a low-hanging fruit, but it's something that we can do and really involve community. So I just am yeah. I feel like Michaela's said everything that there is to be said for right now, but definitely plug into the work that she's doing with Metro Blooms, because I feel like there's many ways that planting is becoming more and more accessible to the community. But she said it all.
Jumping off of what you two have just said, Michaela and Analia, I wanted to share with you the little that I know about the Pilgrim Baptist Church effort in St. Paul. And a couple people maybe mentioned that, and maybe they aren't on now, but if it's all right, I'll go back to the slides there and share just a few things about that project. One I thought was really neat, reviewing some of the materials that I found online. Um, and before I get there, I might just stop at this slide since it's up too. Um, because it was an opportunity when Hannah was talking about the difference between forests and tree plantations, was really the first time I reflected on that. And I've heard various things about the way We do the forestry industry and timber industry in Minnesota. But it was interesting to just reflect. And this slide, Lewis is describing a lecture from Thomas Crowther. And she says, he opened his lecture with a recording of the soothing chatter of birds, frogs, and insects in a natural forest. And then he played a recording of a breeze rustling the leaves of a eucalyptus plantation, void of any of the voices of forest fauna. The UN suggests that almost half of reforested areas around the world are monocultures, just like this, planted for rapid timber production or carbon capture, he said. But the eucalyptus plantation is not an ecosystem at all, but rather a tree farm, commercially useful, but counterproductive to ecological restoration goals. And I think that is really one of the reasons that the mini forest revolution is important to think about. One of the concepts that I struggled with as I was going through this and looking at pictures both online and reading about them was understanding that one of the reasons to do these forestry projects is for connection between people and nature, connection between people and each other. But in the densely packed forest, how do you connect with that? And how do you get the benefits from a cooling that comes in a microclimate if you are on the perimeter of it? And I've been thinking about, and I've been in conversation with Hannah Lewis about this too, just asking her a couple of questions. And it turns out that many of the projects are creating a space within the forest where humans can travel through. Maybe it's designed with that, if it's big enough, so that you can have more interaction and a path through. But the other piece is the mini forest isn't for every spot, right? The tree planting that Michaela and Analia might be doing, and Anna's talking about in various other places, you can bring diversity to those places without having it be exactly like the mini forests that the book talks about, because it's not going to be the right thing for every spot. But regardless of whether that density is the right thing for that spot, it just opens up our eyes, like you were saying, Anna, to the possibility of what can you do? What can you do in all of these places? So Sam, in a couple slides down, there is the focus on the St. Paul project. And it is envisioning mini forests in St. Paul communities. Community-based green space initiative in the neighborhoods of Rondo and Frogtown. And what I loved about this website, which we will put in the resources that we follow up with, is that it really talks about the engagement process they did within the community. And part of that was a survey they did well before the planting was going to happen. On the next slide, you can, oh yeah, okay, let's go. Since we're on this slide. Oh yeah, so now, thank you, Sam. So this is on their website. I want to be clear that this is where I got this resource, but it's an example of a mini forest planted in Karachi, Pakistan. And you can see just the transformation that's happening, the before and then the after picture. And you can also see the space that they've carved out so that there can be traveling through that forest for humans or others, I think. And the next slide, I was mentioning the community engagement that these partners, including Hannah Lewis and Renewing the Countryside, including the Minnesota DNR, including community members, did. And one of the questions they asked in a survey that happened well before the planning was, how do you value green space in your community? I thought that was a really, I love that question. It had wonderful questions throughout the survey, but choices that were popular: connection to nature, a space for relaxation, beautification, And I think these are really valuable to think about when someone's thinking about, do we want a mini forest? Do we need something else? You know, what is the kind of green space that's important and that will be valued by the community and useful to them? And the next slide is another question that was in that survey that I thought was important as well. Do you have any comments or concerns about a mini forest in the Rondo and Frogtown community? And I loved these responses. I think it would be beautiful. We need to take into account it being potential crime spots. Biggest concern would be about sightlines. Worried about not having enough funding to keep it going and maintenance. Just being transparent with the community. I thought the range of responses that people had to which to be considered were really important. And so I was just feeling like the engagement that happened was taking into account a lot of good things. The next slide is, would you like to be involved in the project? And people did. They wanted to be involved in the project. 77% said yes. Let's go on to the next one, Sam. Okay, so I have here some slides on steps to planting a mini forest. We'll put these in the resources, I think, but I don't know that I don't know that we need those here now. I wanted to bring up that St. Paul example. And I'll pause here before I continue on with any of the other thoughts I have to see if anyone else is having any thoughts or knows more about that Pilgrim Baptist project. One of the researchers that will send down is a little video about the planting day that happened in that community.
I don't know anything specific about it. We have visited it since it's close to where we live and was fun to know that it was there. I was interested in that last slide from the questions and the concerns that people raised, not specifically about the one at Pilgrim Baptist, but it is one thing just urban wise back, 25 years ago or whatever it is. It seemed like the big concern was always, you got to get rid of all the low growing brush. You got to get rid of all the stuff to make sure that the sight lines are good and not leave any room for criminals to hide and all that kind of stuff. And that was the kind of stuff that you would usually get at community meetings. It has been interesting to see the sort of coming around of some of this kind of stuff, puts more eyes out there because people are more happy to be out around it, and some of those kinds of things that go with it too. But that is always one of the things that I struggle with on these kinds of things is there are, no matter what you do, there are always a lot of competing ideas about what's important, and it's true that there are, and so how to balance all those priorities kind of as you're putting together a project, I guess. But I do love these things and certainly appreciate the biodiversity. I guess that was the other one thought a little while back too, having to do with them is we've been watching the advocates of the Knife River watershed meetings and things like that up along Lake Superior, and a fair amount of the discussion has had to do with controlled burns and things like that, which and ends up being that in sort of natural control of areas like this, there are things that matter as far as it not becoming a tinderbox on the one hand, and also the regeneration that takes place from things like fire and clearing and all that kind of stuff. So we're just just all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different things in there.
Interesting. Yeah. Forest management generally, but
Yeah, that's mostly in bigger things, not mini forests so much. But I wonder if some of the same things would be a concern.
Yeah. I think you both nailed it in the slides you just showed, Sarah, and in your comments and what I hear you say, Ted. Context, context, context.
Yeah, true.
You know,
Yeah.
and then getting the community to have from their hearts and from their perspectives, their points of view, get the community input, and that's what makes everything successful long term for maintenance on the trees is people who care. So again, thank you for what you're doing. And I would also suggest that anybody, no matter where you're living, check with your parks and recreation department in your city, because they're charged. Here in Woodbury, we have 2 city foresters, and they're charged with the health and the biodiversity and the maintenance and the clearing and the burning and all of those things, the boots on the ground kinds of things. But they really listen, and they care that people care about what's in their parks too. And so the parks matter. Buff, at the eco fair that was in House of Hope's parking lot last April, there was a group that that had a little flyer out, and I don't remember the lady's name. You talked with her quite a bit afterwards, and she might be a good one to connect up with, Sarah, to share these slides, to share your input. And her little booklet, Buff, was "It Starts with a Park." Remember her? You'll think of it.
I
It
have I have that little fold
That
out.
little fold out, yeah. And so it starts with a park, and I think she's in St. Paul. And so it's a very different landscape, like you gentlemen have said, even suburban and urban, and what's happening in the city or up north. And so it all depends on context. But everybody has some kind of a park, a city park, a county park, a park just outside their front door. I'm in a little HOA. And so parks are good places to start, and then get the diversity, because as you wisely showed, Sarah, those mini forests are they're very specific about the requirements of the tree species and where their roots go. And it's important to always think about the context of the people and the trees. So thank you. Is it 7:30? Oh, 7:31. Nana has to go. But thank you. It was lovely to see you. And thank you, young ladies, for doing all you're doing. And Buff, always good. Gentlemen, thank you.
thank you, Anna.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Stay in touch.
Thanks.
Well, am happy to take this conversation to a close now, or I know we have a chance. I I put to 7:45 on the thing, and it absolutely matters not. But I'd be happy to go over any other slides I put together, or just ask if there's a question that you came with that you're like, where do you have any more info on this? Or I don't know, Harvey or Ted or yeah, Ted.
Well, I'm just, you talked about having spoken with Hannah, the author, a few times or whatever and so forth. I'd just be curious to hear more about what she's doing here and sort of what she's thinking about in relation to continuing with the mini forest stuff.
Oh yeah, such a good question. I was communicating by email. So I would love to talk with her. And I'm planning to go to the First Unitarian Society author talk. And maybe Sam is able to put those details in the chat for me. That's going to be in the follow-up too, and it was in the email, the reminder email, but we'll get this information. It's on the February 15th at 12:15, and she's going to be there. I think First Unitarian Society is pulling together a team to explore and potentially do a mini forest, maybe near their building. And so she's going to be there, and I'm looking forward to meeting her and talking more. Sorry, Ted. But
So that's something. That's good.
yeah, no, she was happy to share that photo. I was inquiring about whether she had any recent photos of the Roscoff mini forest that she'd been planting, which she sent and is in the beginning of this. And then I was really wanting to tackle that idea of if it's so dense, how is that connecting with people? And can communities feel the benefits? If one of the reasons we're planting a dense mini forest is because it is for to combat the heat island effect, for instance, um, how far does that transpiration benefit go? And are you going to get that? Is it helpful to the birds that are in there? But does it impact the around the perimeter? And she said that there's a lot of good research being done on these kinds of questions, like where does that impact spread to? So those were some of the things that I was engaging with her on, and I think there is not a lot of solid research about what's the difference if you're packed this tightly versus this tightly, and that kind of research is maybe underway, but more is needed.
Yeah, I mean, climax forests end up not being very diverse in some ways, and shading out a lot of stuff underneath. So maybe over time, even if you're speeding up the process, it may be that they become more accessible to walking through humans than they start out to be. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. It reminded me of, have you heard of high density grazing? This where you pack cows into paddocks that have a lot of good diverse plant life, and you move them regularly. So instead of having cows have free range over huge grazing fields, they are moved systematically through. Um, and and it's the competition with their being next to their neighbor that makes them eat this, like not just their favorite things, like not just the M&Ms and M's and Coca-Cola that I might pick out, but like, oh, okay, I'll have the broccoli too, because otherwise my neighbor's gonna get it. Um, no, your rotational grazing, exactly. I love that, and just this idea that all the trees are competing for the sun, so they're going up fast. Um, but Ted, yeah, exactly. What does that look like in the future? I'm interested in that. And then Buff, do you want to say more about what you just said in the chat?
Yeah, just one of the things about those that high density grazing is it evidently mimics, in the case of cattle, buffalo, and mimics how herd animals have operated more traditionally for the longer period of time than livestock. So
Yeah, it's a big disruption to the land to have it on there, which ends up being beneficial if it's occasional, and then there's
it's a
time to
big
recover.
disruption in a short period of time, and then another disruption in a different place for a short period of time, and then
Yeah. Well, everyone, thank you so much. I feel like I want to let you get back to your evening. we'll send out tomorrow some resources that we mentioned here tonight and that we just learned about too.
Good.
Really nice to see you, Ted. And
Yep, thank you very much.
Harvey, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you.
And Emily,
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks a lot.
All right.
appreciate you.
Bye-bye.